Long before empires and civil war, Rome awoke to the sound of sandals on stone and the smoke of early fires. The city was growing, its pulse quickening with every dawn, a world of ambition and of warning. Among the hills of the eternal city, a child was born to a name that whispered of gods. The genes Julia claimed descent from Aeneas, son of Venus, survivor of Troy. This divine lineage, part myth, part ambition, would become a weapon in Caesar's hands. But the gods alone would not carve his destiny. A mother's discipline would. Though patrician in blood, the family's wealth had faded. They were noble, but modest. Aurelia Cotta, of the influential Cottae, raised her son with order, intellect, and pride. From goddess and senator alike, Caesar would learn one truth: power is inherited or taken. Rome stretched across seas and deserts, but at its heart, the Republic was cracking. Corruption, inequality, and civil unrest threatened the fragile peace of Roman law.
For the Republic!
The blood of reformers soaked the Forum. The Senate remembered and feared. Sulla's dictatorship would soon unleash terror. Prescription lists, executions, chaos cloaked in order. Caesar's youth was steeped in contrast, freedom and chains, opulence and fear. In this world, only the daring would rise. At 17, Caesar married Cornelia, daughter of Cinna, a powerful popular. But the Republic was under the grip of Lucius Cornelius Sulla, the dictator. Sulla demanded Caesar divorce Cornelia. Caesar, barely more than a boy, refused. Stripped of inheritance, branded for death, Caesar vanished into exile. He evaded capture for weeks. Bribery, disguise, and sheer nerve kept him alive. Only the prayers of the Vestals and Aurelia's influence softened Sulla's rage. Reluctantly, Sulla spared him. There are many Mariuses in this one, he warned. Caesar had survived Rome's first purge, but the world beyond was calling. He left not in defeat, but to sharpen the tools of destiny. Exiled but not idle, Caesar joined a legion in Asia Minor, serving Rome where it still conquered. In one skirmish, surrounded and outnumbered, Caesar charged through the enemy line to rescue a fellow Roman. For this, he was awarded the Corona Civica, Rome's civic crown, for saving a citizen in battle. Few honors were greater, and for Caesar, it was the first taste of earned glory. In the East, far from Senate politics, Caesar found his worth in courage and command. He began building a quiet reputation, a man of action, not just ambition. He wrote letters home, carefully shaping the narrative of his valor and duty. But Caesar's journey had only begun. He now set sail to master something just as powerful as war: the art of persuasion. Caesar's voyage to Rhodes promised study and refinement, but the waters of the Aegean held danger. Cilician pirates seized the ship, capturing every soul on board, Caesar among them. They demanded 20 talents of silver. Caesar laughed and insisted they ask for 50. For 38 days he joked, wrote verses, and promised, half in jest, to crucify them once free. Friends returned with the ransom. Caesar's chains fell, but his vow did not. He raised a militia, hunted the pirates down, and reclaimed every drachma they had taken. True to his word, he crucified them, mercifully slitting their throats beforehand. Honor kept, lesson given. With the seas purged, Caesar resumed his quest, arriving at Rhodes to master the art of speech. Under Mullen's guidance, steel became silver tongue. Weapon readied, Caesar turned once more toward Rome. Caesar returned to Rome in the late 70s BCE, a man tempered by war, survival, and study. He found a city still fractured, between elite optimates and reform-minded populares. The poor filled the slums, veterans begged in the streets, and the Senate turned a blind eye. Caesar, though patrician, aligned with the populares, offering vision, charisma, and connection. He began his political ascent with careful oratory, clear, commanding, and disarming. The people saw in him something different, a noble who spoke not at them, but for them. The aristocracy watched him rise. With charm came danger, with popularity, threat. Rome's sacred ladder, the cursus honorum, awaited, and Caesar's foot was already on the first rung. But to rise in Rome was to risk everything. The path ahead would demand brilliance, sacrifice, and blood. Armed with valor and eloquence, Caesar returned to a city still bleeding from Sulla's purge. He found the people restless, the Senate distrusted, and opportunity in every grievance. His voice, trained in Rhodes, now stirred hope and unease in equal measure. First rung, military tribune, command in the field, experience that lent weight to words. As quaestor in farther Spain, he administered Rome's wealth and learned what fueled its empire: debt. As aedile, he gave Rome spectacles, lavish, unforgettable, and paid for them all himself. Then, to the shock of the elite, he claimed the title of Pontifex Maximus, Rome's chief priest. He forged bonds where others saw none, across class, debt, and rank. His marriages were strategic, his friendships calculated. Every connection tightened his grip. Now a master of rhetoric, he wielded words like weapons. Rome listened, and Rome moved. The ascent had begun, and the city would never be the same. By his mid-30s, Caesar had become a political force, admired by the people, feared by the Senate. The optimates called him reckless, a populist exploiting the masses, but they underestimated his strategy. He courted the forgotten, veterans, farmers, tradesmen. Their loyalty was his foundation. But popularity alone could not shake the Republic. Caesar needed power and powerful allies. Pompey the Great, Crassus the Rich, Caesar the rising star. Together, they formed a private alliance. In 60 BCE, the three men created what history would call the First Triumvirate. Backed by wealth and war heroes, Caesar swept into the consulship of 59 BCE. He passed laws to reward his allies, land for Pompey's troops, financial breaks for Crassus's backers. The Senate resisted, but Caesar bypassed them, turning directly to the people. With the Republic already cracking, Caesar had stepped fully into the arena of revolution. As consul, Caesar ruled not by compromise, but by momentum. He governed with the people's voice behind him. He passed land reforms for Pompey's veterans, bypassing the Senate with raw popular will. His co-consul Bibulus declared the year void. Rome declared Caesar alone in charge. Crassus, the Republic's richest man, received favorable tax remissions. Money now moved behind Caesar. Pompey gained loyalty from his soldiers. Caesar gained Pompey. To cement their alliance, Caesar offered his daughter Julia to Pompey, a marriage built on calculation. What began as strategy blossomed into love, but fate would not spare it. Caesar now shaped his myth, descendant of Venus, heir to Troy, future of Rome. In exchange for his political success, Caesar secured a 5-year command, Gaul and Illyricum. He left the city not as a retiring magistrate, but as a commander on the edge of empire. Gaul, wild, fractious, and full of opportunity. Conquest, wealth, and legend awaited. Caesar's ambition had outgrown Rome. The next chapter would be written in blood and fire. '58 BCE, Rome's northern frontier waits, untamed, unbound, and unprepared for the ambition of one man. Fresh from his consulship, Julius Caesar takes command of 4 legions on the edge of civilization. He reaches Geneva, greets veterans by name, and promises fame and plunder. 360,000 Helvetii abandon their alpine valleys, seeking a new homeland through Roman lands. Caesar refuses them passage. Instead, he destroys the Rhone bridges and calls for reinforcements. At dawn, Romans strike mid-crossing, splitting the Helvetia column in 2. Outnumbered yet unbroken, Caesar wheels his cohorts on a hill near Bibracta and crushes the Helvetii counterattack. Survivors are ordered back to their ravaged homelands, an example to every tribe of Gaul. Caesar reports swift victory and requests more legions from Rome. Northern tribes unite, fearing Rome's advance. Caesar marches before they can strike. Engineers throw timber bridges across the Ain under enemy glare. Caesar dares them to attack. In a sudden storm, the nervy swarm Caesar's camp, saved only by the general's personal charge. Within a year, Gaul's north is pacified. Caesar's legend grows. Rome begins to worry. To awe Germanic warlords, Caesar builds a bridge across the mighty Rhine in just 10 days. He spends 18 days east of the river, burns villages, then dismantles the bridge plank by plank. Southeast Gaul calls for help against Ariovistus. Caesar answers. Caesar's disciplined lines break German wedges. Ariovistus flees across the Rhine, never to return. Legions build fortified winter quarters. Caesar writes dispatches. All Gaul is pacified. The Senate murmurs. Has Caesar grown too powerful? But Gaul is far from quiet, and Caesar's ambition knows no border. From the Arverni tribe rose a new leader, Vercingetorix, young, charismatic, and ruthless. He lit the flame of rebellion. Across Gaul, tribes rose against Rome's iron grip. Caught off guard, Caesar scrambled. With winter still deep, the revolt spread like fire. Supplies were cut. Roads were blocked. Even Caesar's allies faltered. But Caesar would not retreat. He marched through blizzards to strike the rebellion's heart. To starve the Romans, Vercingetorix destroyed his own lands. A ruthless, total war. Caesar responded with iron, a ring of siege works, mile after mile surrounding his enemy. He starved out towns, demanded surrender. Those who resisted faced fire and steel. Dozens of towns fell, thousands perished, and still, the tribes would not break. The rebellion grew bolder. Cities revolted. Roman strongholds called desperately for help. At Gergovia, Caesar gambled and lost. The Gauls held the heights. His assault failed. His legions broke off. Hundreds lay dead in the fields. It was his first major defeat in Gaul, and Vercingetorix's legend soared. At Alesia, Vercingetorix was trapped. Caesar encircled the fortress, then was himself encircled. Caesar ordered 2 walls, inner and outer, miles of earthworks against an army twice his size. Trapped within, starved and outnumbered, Vercingetorix held firm as rescue forces closed in. The battle raged for days. Every Roman soldier fought for survival. In the final hour, Caesar himself led a counterattack that shattered the Gallic advance. Vercingetorix surrendered. The greatest threat to Roman rule in Gaul was broken. Alesia marked the end. Caesar had done the impossible, and all of Gaul bowed to Rome. Caesar's conquest had doubled Rome's land, bringing wealth beyond imagining. Spoils of war flooded Italy, gold, slaves, and tales of Caesar's invincibility. In Rome, his victories stirred admiration and deep fear of his rising power. When Caesar returned, he came as Gaul's conqueror, and a man who could no longer be ignored. He had faced countless enemies, crossed rivers and mountains, and bent a continent to his will. But peace in Gaul was only a prelude. Ahead loomed the most dangerous conflict of all: civil war. '58 BCE had brought Caesar glory in Gaul, but by 50 BCE, Rome's Senate feared his fame more than any foreign foe. As winter lifted, envoys galloped across Italy. Caesar must disband his legions or face being declared an enemy of the state. South of the Rubicon, senators in marble halls whispered of arrest warrants. In Ravenna, Caesar gathered his officers by torchlight, eyes flashing beneath his laurel wreath. Then came his moment of destiny. On a cold January night in 49 BCE, Caesar led his legion across the Rubicon River.
The die is cast.
A crimson dawn rose as Roman citizens fled the city. Senators poured from Rome like startled birds, scattering to Pompey's camp in Greece. Caesar marched unopposed through the empty streets of the capital. In the Senate chamber, he read aloud his demands for peace, even as his enemies gathered fleets and armies across the Adriatic. Pompey, master of the East, assembles legions in Epirus. Cato the Younger, rigid and uncompromising, denounces Caesar's every move from exile. In Hispania, Caesar strikes first, racing west with a whirlwind campaign to destroy Pompey's loyal legions before they could unite. Rivers turn red as Roman fights Roman on Iberian fields. In 48 BCE, both titans cross the sea. Pompey's grand army, and Caesar's veterans clash on the plains of Pharsalus. Dust and thunder roll as cavalry sweeps the flanks.
Spare your fellow Romans.
But his soldiers, hardened by a decade in Gaul, break Pompey's center with ruthless precision. Pompey flees to Egypt's golden sands, hoping for sanctuary, yet finds only betrayal. Caesar arrives days later, weeping at Pompey's embalmed head. Then, drawn into Cleopatra's court, he faces new intrigue as Alexandria burns with factional riots. Amid marble columns, Caesar and Cleopatra plan futures of empire. Together, they emerge triumphant, Caesar's legions storming the royal palace as enemy soldiers fall beneath red banners. Egypt secured, Caesar returns westward to stamp out the last Pompeian resistance, chasing scattered senators across Africa and Spain. The Senate doors creak open slowly as Caesar enters Rome victorious. Captured standards line the forum. Senators kneel or slink away. Caesar pardons many, but his concentration of power grows undeniable. A new title emerges on coins: Dictator Perpetuo. The final scenes show murmuring senators gathering secretly. Brutus and Cassius exchange worried glances. Shadows lengthen across the Curia. Civil war had given Caesar Rome. Peace would prove far more dangerous. March 44 BCE. Rome trembled beneath unseasonable storms as thunder cracked over the marble roofs. Citizens whispered of omens, of the gods' fury at a man who sought a crown. In Caesar's villa, Calpurnia awoke from night terrors. She saw blood in her dreams and pleaded with her husband not to leave their home. Outside, haruspices examined sacrificial animals by torchlight, the entrails twisted in unnatural shapes. Danger, they said. The gods are displeased. But Caesar scoffed at portents, dismissing soothsayers with a wave of his hand. Meanwhile, conspirators gathered in shadowed porticos and smoky taverns. Brutus, Cassius, Decimus, and more. 60 men of Rome's elite, united by fear and envy. They whispered of tyranny, of the death of the Republic, of freedom that must be bought with blood. Dawn broke over the Tiber. Caesar dressed in pure white toga, a purple sash and laurel crown. As he stepped into the morning light, his guards formed ranks, but shadows moved among the city's columns, senators hiding blades in their robes. In the Curia Pompeia, senators arrived early, masks of calm hiding hearts of conspiracy. Statues of Rome's founders loomed over the chamber. Caesar walked the forum, crowds parting before him like waves. Some knelt in reverence, others fled to alleys, unwilling to watch what they feared would come. Inside the Senate, silence thickens like fog. Senators circle Caesar as he takes his golden chair. Suddenly, Tullius Cimber grabs Caesar's toga, pulling it down from his neck. Casca strikes first, his blade grazing Caesar's chest. Chaos explodes, daggers flash from every side. Caesar twists, trying to rise. Blows rain down. Blood splashes white marble. Senators cry out. Some strike wildly. Others step back in horror. Brutus steps forward. Their eyes meet. The knife plunges. Caesar gasps. Et tu, brute. His expression shifts from disbelief to resignation. 33 wounds fall Rome's greatest man. He collapses at the base of Pompey's statue, his lifeblood pooling across ancient tiles. Outside, Rome erupts. Citizens scream in panic. Rumors spread faster than footsteps. Caesar is dead. The Republic is saved. The gods will punish us. Brutus and Cassius emerge to proclaim liberty. Yet crowds recoil in horror, fearing vengeance. Senators argue among themselves. Some call for calm, others for civil war. Mark Antony, learning of the murder, raises his voice in the forum, vowing justice. The city stands on a knife's edge. Civil war looms again. Civil war had given Caesar Rome. Peace would prove far more dangerous.